In this chapter, we're going to go ahead and block out our base geometry that we will be taking into ZBrush to sculpt our high definition meshes. We're also going to go over on how to set up a customizable grid, and I'm also going to talk a little bit about some of the techniques that we'll be using in creating tileable renders when we do our final render to texture pass. But first, what I'm going to do is expand my viewport, since I won't really be using these orthographic viewports too much. I'm just going to do that by clicking the Maximize Viewport button down here on the bottom right-hand corner of your Max UI, or you could use Alt-W for the shortcut key. So we'll just go ahead and expand that out like that, and then we're going to go ahead and set up our grid right here to work in whatever units that we want. So I'm going to go up here into the snaps toggle button. I'm going to right click on that and it should bring up the grid and snap settings. I'm going to tab over to the home grid tab, and I'm going to set my grid spacing to 16 units, and what that just does is it places a grid line every 16 units in max world space. Major lines every nth grid line, so this will place a major line however many lines you want. So if we were to set this to 4 and pull back a little bit, it's kind of hard to see in this setup, but what it does is it darkens every 4th line from the origin out. But for right now, we're going to leave that at 8, and we're going to put our perspective view grid extent to about 8, and that'll give us an 8x8 grid in each quadrant. And since we're using grid spacing is 16. This grid right here represents 256 units by 256 units in max space, and it's kind of something that I use with the snapping, and it's just another good reference for how everything's going to tile once we bring it into Photoshop. So if you imagine the end of this grid being the outside borders of your texture map, then it's easier to get a grasp at what we're going to do. So just go ahead and close out of grid and snap settings, and we are going to go ahead and make a couple of box shapes here that we're going to use to build our reference mesh with.